Hello and welcome to my favorite part of the week. This is the episode of Simply the Best. I'm your host, Tal Baker-Phillips, and this is the sales podcast brought to you by Lemlist that finds out what it takes to be simply the best in the business. My guest today teaches founders and sales leaders how to get scalable and successful sales results. Just to mention a few of his accolades. He's written 2 Amazon #1 best-selling books, Addicted to the Process and More Than a Number, as well as co-authoring From Rep to Manager with Ryan Walker. As the SVP sales at Qualia, he went from 0 paying customers to unicorn status after building the sales motion and team from scratch. At Outbound Engine, they were ranked number 95 on the 2016 fastest growing companies list, as well as growing revenue by over 650% during his tenure. In his time as VP sales at the Main Street Hub, he grew the team from 2 to 200 before being acquired in 2018 by GoDaddy for $175 million. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mr. Scott Leese. Scott, how are you?
What's up, Tal? Thanks for having me, man.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. Tell us a bit about your week. Let us know how you've been. What have you been doing?
I've been shuttling my kids back and forth to soccer practices. That's what it feels like. Work during the day and then become an Uber driver at night.
Taxi man, it's the best thing for it. And tell us a little bit, what do they do? What level are they at, your kids with soccer? Just talk about soccer for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I just got back. Well, not just, but over the summer, I was in the UK. My youngest son, who's just turned 14, was training with Swansea as well as Chelsea over in the UK. And my older son is playing in high school level over here, and they both play club, travel team soccer and whatnot. So keeps me super busy. That's not all they do, but that's just the soccer stuff that they got going on. So.
Awesome, man. Really, really interesting. And yeah, you had me at soccer or football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, but yeah, really good. Now, I mean, I could literally talk about that the whole time, but we'll switch it on to something more, closer to home, some sales stuff. Why don't we start with, since it's a sales podcast, a little bit of a pitch. If you could have 60 seconds to introduce yourself to the viewers, keep them engaged, let them know what you're about. Whenever you're ready, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I've been building and scaling sales teams for the better part of 20 years, all over the world, all different sales cycles and sales motions, from SMB to enterprise. The last 4 years, I've been running my own consulting firm where I help primarily early stage companies kind of in that 0 to 25 million ARR journey, figure out their go-to-market strategy, build sales playbooks, help with recruiting, training, coaching, all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's basically who I am and what I've been up to.
Awesome. And we came together, we connected through a mutual friend, and the tips that we've seen, I haven't spoken to one person in the team, and this is God's honest truth, that doesn't follow you and hasn't at least was super excited to know that you were going to be on today. So thank you for joining us again. Now, onto the value section. So here we like to focus on value. We like to give the viewers some advice that they can steal. So can you give us your top 5 things that every viewer can implement today to improve their outbound strategy? Perhaps you could list them, and then we'll dive into each one individually as we go.
Oh boy. 5, you said. Okay.
5.
Number 1, you have to start growing a network. You should have already been growing a network. I don't believe that there is a future where a salesperson without a network is going to be able to succeed. If you pay attention to the news and all this email stuff flying around, that's going to have a huge impact. AI obviously going to have a huge impact. But we also just simply behave differently in terms of the telephone. We don't answer the phone or talk on the phone the way that we used to back when I was a kid. So if I fast forward like 5 to 10 years in the future, I really think the primary way you're going to be able to open up deals is through relationships. And if you don't have a network, you don't have relationships. And if you don't have relationships, you're not going to be able to create opportunity. So that would be number 1, would be to start focusing on your network straight away. Number 2, lock in and define your ICP a little bit tighter. Oftentimes I do work with folks and they tell me their ICP is, somebody with 10 employees to 5,000 employees. And I'm like, that's not an ICP. That's like one day, maybe your ideal customer profile, but selling to somebody who has 10 employees is very, very different than selling to somebody with 5,000 employees. So it's too difficult a task when you're just getting started, at least, to try to hit both ends of that huge spectrum right there. So lock it in a little tighter, build your way up, if you will.
And how would you recommend, if someone does, have one or two different ICPs that they have, how would you recommend that they do start to narrow it down? Do you have any sort of steps that you would follow?
Well, I'm going to operate under the assumption that we're kind of brand new. So if we're brand new, what we need is momentum more than anything. We need belief. We need users. We need people paying us, on the product. And sometimes if you go after these 5,000 employee type companies, the sales cycle is significantly longer, right? And it's a more difficult sales process to navigate. There's more complexity, more decision makers in the buying process. So I would tell you to aim small to start. Faster velocity, theoretically easier to get in touch with people, less complexity in getting a deal done. And therefore, if you can close some of these deals faster, even if they're lower priced, what have you got? You've got momentum. You've got belief that this can be sold. You've got people using the product, which means hopefully you've got happy customers, case studies, testimonials, and you can leverage those to get your next batch of customers. So I tend to start on the smaller end of whatever my one day ideal customer profile will be, and through proof of concept, move my way up. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would focus on it.
Really nice. Interesting. Thank you. Yeah. And something just popped into my head. Sorry to take you back again a step. When you mentioned about building your network, are you talking about your personal brand on LinkedIn? You're talking about a network of people that you are sort of in touch with in the same sphere as you. How do you mean exactly on that? Just to take you back to your first point.
Well, you can't have a personal brand without having a network. So where I would start would be just building the size of your network. I'm not talking about creating content all day long and hitting 17 different platforms with your cute video that makes people laugh. I'm not talking about that shit. I'm talking about literally looking at what you do and trying to connect with people who you may want to work for one day. You may hire one day, right? You may be a peer of. Anybody that you can learn from. So if I'm in sales, I'm just going to connect with sales managers, VPs of sales, founders, other account executives, right? And I just shoot a simple little note that says, "What's up, Tal? Looking to connect with other people in the sales industry. Let me know if I can ever be helpful to you." Something simple as that, no ask whatsoever. I'm just trying to build up the number of people that I'm connected to in some way. Then that gives me an opportunity to interact with them. You don't build a network offline anymore. Back in the day, your network is what, like the people you go to church with, or the people that you are in,
play soccer with.
Yeah, play soccer with, right? Nowadays, your network is online. So easy place to start, LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives you, I think, like 100 people that you can connect with a week, right? Or send messages to. Okay, do that for 52 weeks. That's 5,200 people. I promise you there are people listening right now who have less than 5,200 connections on their LinkedIn profile. You add 5,000 people into your network, your whole entire situation changes. You have opportunities coming your way that you can't even think of. It could be to be on podcasts. It could be deal opportunities. It could be new job opportunities. It could be coaching opportunities for side hustle kind of income. You don't really know. But what you do know is that opportunity comes with that network growth. And over time, as your network becomes larger and larger, now you might, have the urge to start creating content and that type of thing. And then from there, the brand comes, right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm not telling everybody to start go create content, but you're making a mistake if you're not adding people into your network right now. You can also dive into micro communities or macro communities. There's 1,000,001 different ones, depending on what your discipline is. Anything from, free communities like Rev Genius, places like that. Wizard of Ops, if you're in sales ops. Pre-sales collective, if you're a sales engineer. To paid communities like GTM United that I run, or Pavilion that's out there. Those are places to grow your network and build relationships, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Interesting. Thank you. I mean, it's really actionable there. And my final point on this, because that was interesting, the way that you started it, because you do have a very big following, you do have over 100,000, which is very, very high, irrespective of whichever way you look at it. Is that the way that you started to do it first? You started to just send one message as soon as you could, and then maybe the content came after, or how was it with yourself?
Yeah. It actually started for me as a recruiting tool. Because we went through some of the gigs that I was a VP of sales at, but I had like small armies of salespeople scattered around. I had distributed sales team long before it was like in vogue to have a distributed sales team. So I needed to hire people in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, New York City, Denver, Phoenix, all these different places. So I would just get on LinkedIn. I'd type in account executive Phoenix, account executive Denver, and I'd send you a note and be like, hey, Tal, looking to connect with other sellers out there in the Denver area. Not sure if you're looking for any new opportunities right now, but would love to stay in touch. Let me know if I can ever be helpful to you. And people would just start accepting those. And then I do the same thing with sales managers and the same thing with sales directors and whatnot. All because I didn't want to spend any money on recruiting. I didn't want to pay a recruiting agency or a staffing firm. I didn't want to post job ads. What I wanted to do was go on LinkedIn and say, what's up, everybody? I'm looking to hire 10 AEs in New York City. Like, hit me up if you're interested. And I wanted that inbound flow. So that's how I started. And then as my network started to get bigger, I started to kind of adjust my strategy, and I started to think, well, who should I connect with that is like a peer of mine that I could learn from, or a founder level who might want to hire me one day, either full-time or who needs like some coaching or consulting kind of work. So I started going and I'd be like, hey, Tal, see you're a founder in Chicago, looking to connect with other people who are building cool things. Let me know if I can ever be helpful to you. And I would just go around the world. I didn't just use my city. I started connecting with people in EMEA and APAC and all different places, right? So I had little clusters of people that I knew scattered all about the world. And then I started creating content. So I already had a sizable network before I started posting with any regularity whatsoever. And I started as a recruiting tool, then turned it into kind of a prospecting tool for me to maybe find future gigs, whether side gigs or a full-time gig. And then I became, somebody who created content regularly.
Sure. And yeah, and just it's something that you like you say, you don't have to pay for. It's something that's free, and there's so much access to information. There's so many search filters. There's so much to do that it's unrivaled LinkedIn for me for that. Even before I started creating content, I had that feeling that I can actually just do it. I don't have to pay for anything. I can just do it myself, So I appreciated that as well. I interrupted you. So point number 3, Scott, where are you there in terms of back to your main subtopics?
Point number 3, I think, is just practice. We simply do not practice enough. I talk to too many salespeople and sales leaders who say something like, well, I learn best just by doing. So you should just turn me loose and let me start talking to people, and that's how I'll figure it out. I'm not doing that. I'm not turning you loose on current customers or potential prospects when I don't believe you know what the hell you're talking about yet. Why would I do that? So I want to know that you understand the industry, all the key terminology, how these businesses that you're selling to operate and function, how they make money, what their pain points are, who the buyer personas are, and all this kind of stuff. If you pass that test, well, then I'll let you learn my product. Now you need to demonstrate, you know how to use the product. Open a file, run this report, do this action over here, activate this integration, whatever the heck is the product. You got to be able to do that in order to sell, right? If somebody says to you on the call, like, hey, how do I do this in the product? And you stop and you're like, well, I don't really know. I'm going to have to get back to you. That's not a good look. So practice using the product. Then there's all the operational kind of process. Like, how do you know which people to target first? You've got a book of, 250 accounts. Which ones are you going after first and why? Are you running your emails and cadences and stuff like that if you're doing that the right way? Are you skipping over tasks, or are you very diligent and on point about like doing all these things the right way? Are you marking statuses the right way? Are you enriching data as you learn stuff? That's all process stuff that you can practice. And then finally, we come to the pitch. Now I want to know that you can deliver a cold pitch, or you can run a demo, or you can do an inbound call if you're an inbound rep, or an expansion call if you're an outbound rep. And you should be practicing these things over and over and over again until it's just second nature. And reps have gotten away from that, and managers have gotten away from that. You should be doing these kind of role plays, peer-to-peer or peer-to-manager, every single day, especially if you're behind target or missing target. Yeah. The worst rep in the world is somebody who's missed target, who doesn't practice.
And I have a question for you on that point you made about the salesperson, for example, not knowing something, not having used the tool enough. What is your thoughts? Because I have an idea about this. What is your thoughts on, for example, like a solutions architect or the salesperson inviting someone else that has more knowledge or expertise about the tool into a sales meeting? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it sucks. I think it's a over-engineered sales department where we've siloed off all of these roles into their own role. And what we've done is we've created these very entitled, very lazy account executives. And this whole customer acquisition cost funnel that we've built is fucking massive. And it's one of the reasons why all these companies are dying and walking around like zombies right now, because they paid an SDR 90K OTE, they paid an AE 150K OTE, and they paid a solutions engineer 120K OTE, all to close one fucking $30,000 deal. Why? I don't understand that. You know, in the early days, if somebody's just getting started, now I understand, like, okay, I might need Tal to ride shotgun with me here and help me out because I'm just getting acclimated and learning all this stuff. But at some point, you got to take the training wheels off, all right? And the salesperson needs to be able to speak intelligently about all of this kind of stuff. If you don't, the moment you're like, well, that's a good question, let me get my sales engineer over here, you just lost all authority. Because if I'm a buyer, I'm like, well, why am I talking to you?
It's exactly. I don't get it. I don't get how. For me, it's just a better sales team. And you say, oh well, with the X team, we have. Often it's like double the success rate or conversion rate with this particular team involved, or it's far higher than without these sales enablement solutions, whatever you want to call it. So that's where they should be doing the sales call then, because they're winning the deals. So yeah. I don't understand this entire department. It's interesting you said that as well. Yeah. What your next point then, Scott? What else is there? Point number 4. Point number 5. Sorry, my counting's not so good.
Yeah, I don't remember if we're on 4.
Your next point.
4 or 5 either. This is something that I am just learning more and more about, but deliverability is something that has to be paid attention to. You know, I would by no means call myself an expert in this field whatsoever, but when you got, if you're lucky, like 1% response rates from email prospecting, you have better be doing all the work possible to make sure that your domain is not getting blocked and that you're avoiding spam and you're not doing something stupid like mass emailing 5,000 people a day. And if my LinkedIn feed is to be believed, nobody out there on planet Earth is emailing 5,000 plus people in a single day, because nobody wants to admit it, but somebody's doing it. But you just can't do those kind of things anymore. We're moving away from just mass prospecting to more selling via intent buying signals, right? And you've got to start making that adjustment now. So if you're a seller and you don't understand much about that, start studying it. Ask your ops person, ask your sales leader, you know, what are we doing to, you know, make sure that this problem is, we're not a part of this problem and we're not getting blocked, because I don't want to be doing all this work and people are not even receiving any of my messages whatsoever.
It makes you want to cry, doesn't it? Running the perfect email and then the idea that it doesn't even go to their inbox.
Yeah, it doesn't even go. It doesn't even go. So it's like, who cares how good your email was if it doesn't ever end up in my inbox? Yeah. And I never see it.
Yeah.
Talk about wasted effort, right? And, you know, when that happens once, it's not that big of a deal maybe. But if you talk about one rep having that problem multiple times a day over the course of a month or the course of a year, and now you think about your whole sales team and it's not just one rep, it's 10 reps or it's 100 reps, the problem becomes very, very expensive. Very expensive, right? So I don't know if that was point 4 or 5, but that was one of them.
It was one of them. And can I ask as well what your thoughts firstly on that announcement was? Your initial thoughts. You said that it's not something you're an expert in or something you have a huge knowledge base on. But what were your first thoughts initially when you saw some of the posts on LinkedIn and the announcement about the updates to this?
My first thoughts is it just confirms what I've been preaching for a year very loudly and getting a lot of people mad at me. But I think that cold emailing and cold calling are dying, frankly. I don't think they're dead. I don't think you can stop doing them, nor should you stop doing them. But the fact of the matter is, we are all absolutely bombarded in our inboxes with notifications and everything. It's not just email. How many unread emails do you have right now, Tal?
In my inbox right now, about 40.
40. That is like magnitudes of zeros less than most people. I just got off a call with a client of mine earlier, and he was sharing his screen, and I saw he had 3,400 something unread emails. And that I think is the case with most people. So how are you going to send that guy a note and expect him to see it and get it when he doesn't know who you are or what you do? There's no recognition whatsoever. Do you pick up the phone when strangers call you, Tal, or do you let call ID kind of filter that out?
I'll be honest, I like to, maybe it's because I'm in the industry, if you like, I do like to listen to what they say, but I also get annoyed pretty quickly if it's not pristine.
Well, I'm the type of person that has my ringer off 24/7.
Yeah.
Right. And I just don't use the phone the way that I used to. But it's not even about you and I. It's actually about, I would argue, the generation or two under me. It's my kids' age. My kids are 14 and 16. If you have kids that are teenagers, go ask them tonight, when was the last time you talked to your friend on the phone? Like, called them and talked to them on the phone. I promise you they will say never. They don't do it. And now ask them if they use email at all. They don't use email. So what difference does it make if you're writing perfect email, and even if you're having no deliverability issues, if the person that you're prospecting does not use that channel at all? And I think in 5 to 10 years, you're going to have today's teenagers who become founders and executives in about 5 to 10 years, who simply cannot be prospected to the way that we've historically done it. And I think the only way into those opportunities is through somebody you know. So if I'm trying to get a hold of Beck, and I don't know Beck, and she's ignoring me, but I know you, and I see that you are friends with her, I'm going to go to you and say, hey, listen, I'm trying to get a hold of Beck. She might have this problem. I have this solution that solves that problem. Do you know her well enough to broker an intro? And by the way, if you make that intro and I close the deal, I'm going to break you off like 10 to 15% of the first year's revenue on that deal. Are you open to making an intro like that? You're going to be like, yeah, I know her well. And you're going to pay me for making an intro? Fuck. Okay. Sounds good to me. So you message her and you're like, hey, my buddy Scott wants to talk to you about this. If you're into it, want to take the meeting, I assure you it's worth your time. If you're not, no problem. No worries. What do you want to do? Beck says, oh yeah, I trust Tal. Tal trusts Scott. I do kind of have that problem. I might as well talk to this guy. And if we close a deal on it, everybody wins. I'm happy because I closed the deal. Beck's happy because she got a problem solved. And you're happy because you helped two people that you like and you got paid. Right?
Yeah. No, and I think that I completely agree on that point. And the only two ways normally where you would act upon something that is sort of requested of you is if you have trust. You mentioned that word trust in someone else, and they come to you. And also if it's surprising as well. If it's surprising out the box, and you go, do you know what, that is intriguing enough to me to solve that problem. It's done in a way that's approachable. That I think is the opposite of the kind of anti-spam nature of the deliverability side that we've seen this past week. So I do agree with you on that point there. Scott, can I jump in with a couple of questions just to mix it up a little bit after you've done that? Thank you for that. That was really, really interesting there. Scott, what do you think about the upcoming changes that Google is imposing? How do you think it would change the outbound efforts of AEs? So we've kind of gone on to that, but I mean, any kind of finishing points on that? The AE side of it might be interesting with the outbound efforts from AEs.
Well, I think what's going to happen is that AEs are going to have to start outbounding again.
Yeah. You don't think they do now? I certainly don't.
You know, you can't just sit around on your hands waiting for somebody else to, you know, do all the work for you and tee up a demo. You're going to have to get in there and find a way, whether that's through sending emails, whether that's through DMing people on LinkedIn, whether that's through a nearbound kind of motion like I've been talking about, where you know somebody and you're asking for introductions. So I think you're going to see continued decline of the role of the SDR and continued migrating back towards the world that I came from, which is full cycle AEs who have to start outbounding as well.
I agree. And just my own question, just stuck in there. What do you think about the, in fact, I'll go on to this other question because it touches on it. Scott, are there some tools or technologies that you find actually valuable for salespeople in today's market?
Actually valuable for sales? Yeah, I mean, CRM technology is still valuable. Assuming you've got high quality data providers, that's still valuable technology. I'm a big proponent of sort of conversational intelligence tools that allow you to coach your reps and listen to their calls and provide feedback and, punch in, punch out to the right spots, those type of technologies. I'm not a big fan of over engineering and having 47 tools on my team and each tool does this one little thing. I think reps get tool fatigue, and actually there's tons of data that shows once you have more than 4 or 5 tools, the adoption levels of those tools drops off significantly. So to me, it's like, let's have some of the essentials, and that's about all that I need.
Just the thought of having an extra tool makes me not want to use it. I'm deadly serious. Just the thought of having to log in, sign up, get it done. It makes me just go, unless it's really something that's, a key pain, maybe deliverability, that might be something to work on. But yeah, okay. Thank you. Scott, one more question. Love the shared value on this one. I would love to know, if you have a deal closed, what percentage of that sale contribution was content of email and what percentage was good prospecting?
Well, what's the difference between email and good prospecting?
I think that's a good question. I think that I mean, in terms of the email would influence the content of the email. I think the copywriting of that email, and then as opposed to just being the right place, the right ICP, the right timing, an intent.
Well, that's a good question. I think that the right person at the right time with the right message is probably more important than the copy. I'm not somebody who's going to overanalyze copywriting and spend 45 minutes writing one email. I'd rather spend 45 minutes doing tons of research to make sure that I feel confident that Tal has this problem right now. I've seen him talking about it and interacting with people in the community, asking for solutions and whatnot. I'd rather spend more time on that than the actual copy in the email.
Interesting. Okay. And something else as well. The point I was going to make, you mentioned problem a lot. So, I mean, the word problem you touch on, not once have you said pains or anything like that. What makes you talk in that kind of language about the problems that people are having, as opposed to most of the time when we talk about email or prospection or anything like that, it comes around to the pains that the prospect is having, the pain here, the pain there. Is that something that's accidental or something that you've sort of purposely
No, I think it's a little bit accidental, if I'm being honest. They're interchangeable a little bit, but pain to me is stronger than a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of problems I don't do anything about.
Mm-hmm.
You do too, probably. Now, if I'm in pain, it's very hard not to do something about it, right? So I think it's a little bit accidental. They're a little bit interchangeable parts, but if I really try to psychoanalyze it, I don't assume that you have a pain. I can make an assumption that you have a problem because I've noticed you on 3 straight podcasts and 2 pieces of your content and in this community asking people, how do you solve for this thing and that thing? That tells me that you have a problem. But pain implies that it's strong enough of a problem that you want to do something about it now. So I want to understand the problem. Then I want to get you to admit that this is actually a pain point. So you understand the value of fixing it and you're committed to fixing it right now, today. So you have urgency behind it. I think that's my progression as we're kind of talking through this.
That's interesting, and I'll just stay on that point just there, because if I take an example, let's say my ankle hurts, that might be a pain, but the problem wouldn't, like, it might hurt like it hurts now, like it does, it hurts, but I'm not going to do anything about it because it doesn't stop me doing anything. The problem would arise if it said, okay, if you don't get that fixed, the problem is you can't play football for the next 2-3 months. And there's the problem. So the pain, I think a lot of people have pains here, there, but it's only when a problem is presented that they actually do something about it. So I just have a slightly sort of a different,
Yeah. I think they're interchangeable parts a little bit, but I think the most important thing people should pay attention to is just because somebody tells you that they have a problem or a pain point does not mean they're going to do something about it. You know, I wrote this book in 2017 called Addicted to the Process. And in that book, I talk about the addiction model of selling. And if you don't know my story, I spent 4 years in the hospital dealing with severe illness, had 9 major emergency life-saving surgeries, got addicted to opioids in the process, and had to kick off of dope all before I ever started a sales career. When I started selling, I realized that my sales methodology mirrored the recovery process. And you can't go to somebody with substance abuse problems and just start telling them about your solution. And, you know, be like, hey, Tal, I got this killer rehab facility in Malibu called Passages. Like, let's go. You recoil from that. You're like, what are you talking about, dude? I don't have a problem. So the first step is somebody admitting that they have a problem, right? But how many functioning addicts do we know? Or do we know who are out there? They have a problem, but they don't think it's painful enough or important enough to do something about. Or maybe they're not even educated enough to realize that they're doing damage to themselves. So we get somebody to admit they have a problem, admit that they have pain, right? Then we have to educate them on why they should care about fixing this. Like, if you leave your ankle hurt like that, here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to overcompensate in the way that you start walking. And the way that you start walking is going to create joint pain in your knee and in your hip. And over a period of time, once you're an old man like Scott, you're going to have arthritis in your knee and arthritis in your hip, all because you didn't fix this ankle problem, right? Well, even armed with the education of why they should fix it, people still don't take action because they have to hit what? What do addicts have to hit before they do something about it? They have to hit rock bottom, right? Well, what is rock bottom in the sales process? It's urgency. What's the hardest thing for salespeople to create in the sales process? Urgency. Convincing Tal that he should buy now instead of 6 months or 12 months or never, right? It's the urgency piece. That's what I want people to pay attention to. Just because somebody tells you that they have a pain point or a problem and understands why they should fix it does not mean that they're going to fix it straight away. You have to help create this narrative where, okay, I have to do something about it right now. Otherwise, bang, like I'm in danger.
Impact of that problem
is
too great.
Impact. Yes. And then when you do that the right way, kind of the next words out of people's mouth are like, okay, so I assume you can help me with this. Like, tell me about what you guys do. And now my job is to explain why I am best suited to help somebody. That's a very different process than the way most people sell, which is they call up Tal and they're like, hey, Tal, this is Scott Leese from Scott Leese Consulting. We do blah, 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 blah. I'd love to walk you through a demo. And Tal's like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Right? Because I skipped over the first 3 steps.
Exactly. And I think one for me is before I wrap up and ask you maybe one more question, but the moment where you know something's gone right in a call, and you tell me if this is the same thing in your perspective, but when someone starts to ask you a question, you don't ask people questions about how to solve something if you don't trust them, if you aren't convinced by their credibility. So as soon as someone says, oh, so what do you recommend? What do you think? And then I think, well, if they're asking me this, I mean, I must have got to the point where I've at least shown that there's credible nature, where I've at least shown that I can be someone that can solve this. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a signal. I think that it doesn't automatically mean I should skip ahead and start telling everybody what my product or my solution is. But I think it's a signal that I'm on the right track. It's a signal that, you know, there's awareness happening. It's a signal that they need to know more, that they want to talk about this more, that they're intrigued, right? And the more of those kind of signals I get, the closer I'm getting towards, creating a real opportunity and and eventually closing a deal.
Yes, really nice. Can I ask one more? And one more, and then I will let you go, Scott, because it's been very nice speaking to you. And thank you for introducing us to that sort of story, your background as well. I'd like to ask, what's the biggest time waster people should stop doing? I feel you've got there's something there that you might be able to share with everyone.
Biggest time waster people should stop doing. I mean, I think going after the wrong type of accounts, honestly, is a huge, huge problem. Here's an example. I think everybody has been a part of a sales org that, let's just say, sells to SMB or mid-market, but they get that one lead or two leads that come in that's like this massive enterprise deal. And the product's not really ready for that type of deal yet. We're not really totally able to service this account the right way yet either, right? But the salesperson is like, oh my God, if I close this deal, it makes my annual quota in one shot. So I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to fill out like this massive RFP that's going to take me a month to get all this information. And I'm going to chit chat with these people a million times, over the course of the next 3 months. So much so that my focus becomes myopically on this big deal. And I neglect all of the other deals that I'm supposed to be working. And I'm chasing down the wrong type of deal. That's the biggest time waster that I see. People going after the wrong type of deals for their stage.
And that's multi-teams. Sorry. And it's multi-teams as well that are impacted as well.
Yes,
it's not just the one sales team.
You're not just wasting your time, you're wasting everybody else's time that's having to get involved. It's a very costly problem.
Absolutely. One more in the chat before I summarize, Scott, I promise, and then we're done. How do you make sure that you don't assume the pain on the first outreach?
Well, I think this is where some research comes into play. It's so easy to do research now with all the generative AI stuff, depending on who you're selling to. I mean, I think you could punch in my LinkedIn profile or my business website into a generative AI prompt and be like, tell me what Scott's problems are. And it will just scour the profile and scour my website and, spit some things out. You can review earnings calls and all this kind of stuff. And there's things that summarize recent podcasts or webinars that people have been on. You have to scan their content or their blogs and their press releases, look at their hiring numbers. Are they going up or going down? There's so many things depending on what you're selling that I think give you a signal that there is some type of pain that's there, would be one. And the second way would be, think about networking your way in. If you remember my story where I talked about me and Tal and Beck, what I said to Tal was, hey, I think Beck might have this problem and I have this solution. Can you ask Beck if she indeed does have that problem and if it's something that she wants to kind of chase down? So I'm basically putting the ball in the buyer's court at that point in time. And so they're opting in to having a conversation with me. Then I think I avoid the assumption and kind of, looking foolish.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, of course, during the discovery as well, I guess you could, that's before the discoveries even happen, but I guess during as well, you could ask the questions as well to make sure that you can clarify it with them, right? But that's the AE's job during the call, of course,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Better discovery, taking your time up front at the beginning. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ask them how they've been trying to solve this problem so far, what's worked, what's not worked.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's
if you had a magic wand, what would you change about your current, situation? Then they tell you something, you're like, oh, that's funny. We actually do that thing that you think you need a magic wand for.
Would you have guessed it? And then there's the myriad of them, the million questions that you could or couldn't do in a discovery. I'll summarize now, Scott. Thank you so much. So we first focused on the 5 takeaways was to get a tighter ICP, be more creative, utilize your network, ensure deliverability, and then have a consistent pitch and process. We maybe mentioned that in the sort of after stages. We spoke about that, but those were the overall ones. To finish, Scott, 30 seconds to promote anything you'd like.
Promote anything.
Anything that you like, perhaps.
Yeah. I leave in a week and a half for Costa Rica. I run sales conferences for sellers, sales leaders, and entrepreneurs down in Costa Rica. It's called Surf and Sales. You can check it out at surfandsales.com. I usually hold like 2 or 3 of these a year, and we kind of balance content for half a day with surfing for a few hours and beach time and drinks and good food and just like experiential kind of networking. So if you don't like going to big, huge conferences, but want to get away and learn something, take a look at Surf and Sales as an option for next year.
Amazing.
Or this year, if you're feeling really spur of the moment, spicy.
If the weather's as bad as it is now, and I don't want to talk about the weather, it's like a storm here. So people are probably thinking about surfing in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this accent brought the weather to Paris. Let me tell you that. We'll finish it there, Scott. It was absolutely great speaking to you. I really appreciate it. You, my friend, are simply the best. I will see you soon, everybody. Don't forget to tune in to the Outbound Hub community if you haven't already. It is where we share tips just like this and tricks for your outbound and sales needs. I will be there. Lily will be there, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.